It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. This show is brought to you by the support of our sponsors like cart-king.com. Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Cart-king.com is the answer to your needs. 877-986-7771. For 20 years, they've been working with clients and corporations across America to provide indoor and outdoor carts and kiosks for any applications. They sell those carts and those kiosks. You see selling coffee carts or flowers or souvenirs, magazines and stuff like that. You see them in the lobby of a hotel or a hospital or in an airport or a shopping mall in the middle of a shopping mall, selling those helicopters and stuff, those perfume things. CartKing.com. So whatever kind of business you're in, go to cart-king.com. Check out their different styles and designs. They'll custom design it for you, custom build it for you, then they'll ship it worldwide. Pure Soap Flake Company. You check them out at puresoapflakes.com, greenhome.com, amazon.com, 218-568-2525. If you've ever heard of Castile Soap, Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Stuff is great. We use it ourselves. You use it on the little bar soap. You use it over your body. Feels great. No chemicals, no detergents in it. Then you wash your clothes, and this stuff comes with flakes. You wash your clothes. The clothes come out clean without any kind of chemicals in them. And then you use the same stuff. You clean your pots and pans. It comes out cleaner than ever before. PureSoapFlake.com. Check out AlmightyGold.com. Get your gold in affordable quantities. 1 gram, 2.5 grams, 5 grams. No minimum purchase required. Why save in paper when you can save in gold? Almighty Gold understands that it's difficult to afford large quantities of gold. No one can afford an ounce of gold. That's crazy. It's like $1,500. But you can invest in 1/10 of a gram of gold, like $6. They have a cryptocurrency that's backed by gold. And you can join their affiliate program and become an affiliate and sell gold yourself. You put that affiliate link, you sign up for free, you get your affiliate link, you put it on your website, your Twitter account, your Facebook, your Instagram. Insta, as the kids call it. And every time somebody clicks on that link and they get to buy some gold, you get a commission. Emailrevealer.com. You can go there and get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Also, too, the home of the online infidelity investigation, where you give us somebody's email address and we trace it back to online dating websites and personal ads and catch them cheating online. Emailrevealer.com. Okay, our first guest today is the author of a book called Satan's Show. His name is Ren A. Clegg, but the title on the book, if you go look for it on Amazon, is W.A. Clement, and the book is called Satan's Show. Mr. Clegg, are you there?
Yes, I am, Ed.
Thank you so much. Mr. Clegg, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Ren A. Clegg?
Well, I am just a normal human being, nothing special. I'm a commoner. I refer to myself as I'm a working man, blue collar, and basically a lifelong, at 57 years old, a lifelong amateur investigator or amateur historian. I just happen to not, most of my life, believe the news as it's presented to us, and I grew up with the Barbara Walter Cronkite era news, and of course the Vietnam War and those things, and as a young boy, and all my life from there, nothing really stuck that we were given. Of course, it's led me to be kind of odd or kind of different than most of the boys and girls and later men and women that I've been around who really don't want to hear this stuff, the things of the scriptures that are really not given us in truth or in any great detail, the things of our world, our life, daily events. And so I went through school and come out and worked many blue-collar jobs. I'm a truck driver profession, and so I've traveled the country, coast to coast, seen and done many things, but I've always had kind of an eye open and an ear open and an antenna up for certain aspects of our world, and it's just been fascinating to me, and it's led me to write a book about things that have jumped off the page at me, so to speak. And I've written this book, well, probably starting in the late 90s, in little parts and pieces, going up right on through 9/11, and then in the early 2011 year, I published it and put it on Amazon, and so here we are.
So you said we're 57 years old. We're the same age, and these kids today, they call it getting woke. They woke up. Right? What age were you? Right, all right. What age were you? Like when you started realizing all this stuff and got woke, as they say.
Well, it's hard for me to think back that far in that aspect, but I'm going to say I was probably easily in my young teens. I wrote in my middle teens what I was going to do in my life. I knew I was going to be a truck driver because it was my interest. I could name every truck coming down the highway or any truck I could see from a far distance, and by the time I got close to it, it got close to me, that would be the truck, whether it would be a GMC or a Freightliner or you name it. And so trucks always interested me, but I just knew certain things in my life at a young age. I would say early teens, and so that's my story. I don't know if there was any earlier than that. I was raised in foster homes, Ed, and so I had some certain things to pay attention to. Being bounced around in some foster homes, me and my brother and my sisters. Younger sisters went off in that direction too, and we were separated for most of our lives, and then we've kind of got back together mainly through this wonderful technology, telephones and internet. And then as far as building my life from there, things just kind of took a course. I always felt like, I would say certain things to people about the news, about an event, and they would look at me like I had three heads. And so I knew kind of, people didn't want to hear a lot of this stuff, and they thought it was weird and conspiracy, theories in that realm. And but nevertheless, at a young age, so probably I'm going to say 40, 45 plus years, I've always been a little odd about things, and I just started writing them down and doing research and reading books, and so it's been a while.
I would say that the first thing that I was made aware of was the military-industrial complex. And how it was all for profit, and these big companies like Rockwell International, and it had so much power in the Trilateral Commission, all that kind of stuff. We're talking about the late 70s, I'm thinking, What was the first thing that you came aware of that you saw that things weren't as we're being told?
Well, that's a real good question, but very quickly, since you mentioned the military-industrial complex, and of all companies, Rockwell. Is that who you said, Rockwell?
Yeah, Rockwell International is one of the ones...
I have 4 patents, 4 U.S. patents, and Rockwell was a company that kind of had some issues with, and of course they have as much money as the government because they basically are the government in some aspects. But the military-industrial complex was always suspect to me. Let me try and think real quick what was one of my first incidents. I can tell you hands-on the Vietnam War was always kind of in my mind, what are we fighting for over there? And these damn Vietnamese, and I'm not thinking of the slang right now, but spooks, these damn spooks and stuff. And of course, I lived on White Man Air Force Base as a boy, and White Man Air Force Base is now the B-52 bomber stealth bomber base. It has been for some time, but of course that wasn't around in the 60s. There were other planes and big planes, and the foster father that I had at that time, he was an instructor, and I would go in with him on occasion. My brother and I, we'd sit in aircraft simulators, and it was just basically a cockpit sitting in the middle of a room and all kinds of instruments, and that was fascinating. But the Vietnam War always kind of interested me. What are we fighting for? What's going on? So I think that probably had an impact in my life to kind of pay attention and research some things as we grew up, and I found out really we weren't fighting for anything except for the military-industrial complex, quote unquote. And so, and the military-industrial complex, as it was presented to us, the more research I did, the more I realized that was a bunch of baloney. Yeah, it's military. Yeah, it's industrial. And yeah, it's a big, complex thing. But there's a lot of parts and pieces to that. And in the research, I basically, in my own mind, discovered that, and most people at the time didn't catch it when Eisenhower gave his speech. It was only years later, because that's a new thing in my research that I hear more people talking about. Most people never ever talked about that most of my life. That was, heck, that's taboo. Don't don't talk anything that may even come across as negative about our military. And if you do, that means you hate our military men and women. That kind of connection, and it's kind of really, it's sad. But Eisenhower was a buffoon, in my opinion. Was he a great man? I'm sure he probably was in some aspects. Historically, researched some things about him, but he was basically a yes man. That's what he was, and his really big claim to fame within the military was he was considered an excellent administrator. Well, I don't know what that really means personally to him, but in watching him, I'm assuming he gave orders very well. Other than that, he was a nobody, and he was part of the people that killed Patton. Did he do it? No, I'm not saying that, but he was on the upper side of the players that run things. That he was their guy, and Patton wasn't. Patton was in the way, and so no, the military-industrial complex probably runs and controls all of our lives more than any single thing, I do believe. But I don't look at it the same way as many. So I'll stop there. Go ahead.
What are some of the topics you cover in the book Satan's Show?
Well, I start in the beginning, and I talk quite a bit about the early banks in the United States. It's one of the primary focuses early on with the banks, the first Bank of the United States, the second Bank of the United States, and so on, right up through Andrew Jackson, who got rid of the charter for the second bank. Basically, it was really the third, but officially the second U.S. bank. And when that charter ran out, there were major problems that were created right on up to a depression. Of course, most people only know about the Great Depression of '29, but there were others, and another huge one in the early 1800s. And so I start with the bankers and give a little history about those. And really, Ed, all I'm trying to do with my book is to plant the seeds of truth. And if they grow somewhere, that's fine. But it's for mainly to give an overlay of what's happened to our country. And not all of it's bad. Most of it is good. But there is a controlling factor above us that won't go away. The banks are the largest part of that. Now, one could say in the things that I research, well, if it's the banks, well, who runs the banks? Well, now we're talking the next step. The people that operate our money system, as they say, some say they create reality. That was even mentioned in some recent television shows, conspiracy theories by, I forget the guy's name, the ex-Minnesota governor and one-time wrestler.
Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura, yes, and he was in that one Wall Street show he did, where he walks into the boardroom and they're all sitting in there basically laughing and joking, and they control things. Well, that's true, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of true. They give us our industries. They fund many of the the things in the world that we need to live, and we need the money. We need those things, but they're there. And are they used to manipulate us? Well, sure they are. But they also give us things that we need to live, and that's a big, big production that without that organization, where would we be? I don't know. I'm not saying I know, but where would we be? We need them, but there's some nefarious aspects too. So I give an overlay in the book basically with the bankers, and they are behind everything, and of course I'm sure many of your listeners know, including our wars. Mm-hmm. And they're there. What does it mean? And where would we be without them? Well, that's a whole other book, maybe a whole other issue, but I give that overlay right on up to the Civil War.
Well, let me interrupt you for a second about the banks, because you said that Andrew Jackson came in and he changed things, the way the banking system was run. Before that, did we have state banks before that?
Well, there was a money system, and initially with the 13 colonies, that was all controlled, by England, mm-hmm. by the king. And then, of course, we quote-unquote defeated the king in the Revolutionary War, and then we moved on from there into I'm trying to think of the initial bank. It really wasn't the first or the second bank as it's called, but that was the first bank, and all the money was in it. Well, Andrew Jackson eventually went and took that money and put it into another bank, which basically bankrupted the first bank, so to speak. So the money system, I don't give an in-depth detail history of each bank and who their officers were, et cetera. It's those three banks initially up to Andrew Jackson were the money supply. And that money supply even included money from Napoleon, who gave us $3 million at that time, early 1802, I think, and $3 million in gold. And that was the purchase of what was called the Louisiana Purchase, the Western Territory that we purchased from Napoleon. And, of course, that made bankers mad because they had other ideas, and I go into a brief history of that, so to speak. But I don't go into any great detail about those banks. They were there, and it really built and was the foundation of our early growth in the United States and some industries. Was that the answer to your question you're looking for?
Well, I don't know. Are you familiar with the concept of a state bank that they have in North Dakota, and that they want to bring it to California, where instead of a privately owned bank by stockholders, it's owned by a public bank?
Yes, I'm familiar with that, and there was some of that going on early on, outside of the barter system. But I don't go into those details. I'm in favor of any private bank, really. Especially if it's backed by something like gold, which our system is not currently. But I don't go into those great details. There are good books on the banking system. The Creature from Jekyll Island is a good book on understanding, our money system in that regard. But I don't go into any of those details. But I'm familiar with what you're talking about vaguely, I'll say.
Okay. And then where were you going next about the Revolutionary War?
Well, of course, the Revolutionary War I touch on briefly too. No battle details or anything like that, but I do start there even about the same time I'm talking about our early banks, Ed, and what led to our independence was, I believe, a miracle from Almighty God, and our independence, and of course, the United States as we know it today. Those are the people I respect the most in life, as much as anyone, I'll say, or those people who gave us our independence. We hear all the time, every day almost nowadays, that how wonderful our soldiers are, and they're fighting for our freedom. And it's one of the things I mentioned earlier on in our conversation here. Our soldiers are really not fighting for our freedom. Now, if that's what gets them to join and go fight an enemy and give us a military, that's fine. No problems. But they're not fighting for our freedom. Our freedom was already fought for and won. Now, they might be maintaining our freedom, so to speak, but they're not fighting for our freedom. That was already done. That was what the Revolutionary War, was all about. And we've been battling to keep it ever since. So those are my heroes, those Revolutionary War soldiers. Less than 5%, you can roughly say 5%, depending on the numbers you listen to, actually fought and won our independence. Contrary to what some believe, there was no great giant within the 13 colonies, let's just say, swell of people who rose up against England. As a matter of fact, it was less than 5%. And they did it for us. And some of them, had, personal interest. They were going to lose, property and so forth. And of course, they were conscripted to join George Washington and the army. So a lot of them had to do it, but whatever the reason, they did it and they won. They succeeded, and I believe also that the hand of Almighty God prevailed because it was tough. Those men and women, they paid an awesome price, but 95+% did nothing, reaped the benefits. And so here we are. I say hallelujah, here we are. But those are my heroes because they gave us what we have, and, we've been trying to maintain it.
So now,
going forward.
You have some people who have researched this, and they conclude that the founding fathers were Christian-based and faith-based. And then you have others who question this, and they say, well, they were part of the Lunar Society and Freemasons. And you had Ben Franklin with the Hellfire Club and all those people. Where do you land on all that? What is your conclusion? A
lot of that research is very accurate and interesting, and one of the things I can say about it is the Freemasons, even today, I know Freemasons. I'm not a Freemason. I have nothing really against them. I know Freemasons today, not many, maybe a half a dozen or so, and people I've run across, but they're not the movers and shakers in Freemasonry. They're not. And I put this in my book a little bit. They are there to basically maintain the club, help pay the electric bill for that lodge or whatever, and get together, and they don't know what goes on above them. And so, and some of my research, basically, I heard a beep. Are you there?
No, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I don't know what that was. Yeah.
I've researched some of those quote-unquote Freemasons. I believe and there is some research with Washington that he backed away later on. They were there basically because in many aspects they didn't have a large list of clubs to join. Today we could join Mercy, we can join AAA, anything we want to, right? They didn't have that. Now, were there pressures, to go become a part of maybe a higher echelon in their communities? But it wasn't like it is today. And I haven't found no information that they were actually doing, whatever you call it, seances and, eyes wide shut type of stuff. If I'd ever see something like that, well, then I'd probably change my opinion. But I don't think they were anything, they were against the establishments in Europe, England at that time, for that were doing those kinds of things. And I do know Ben Franklin. There's some questions about him, and he was really connected to the money system himself. And there may be some issues with Ben Franklin that kind of implies or implicates him in some weird stuff like that. And
yeah, they actually found some little bones.
If I saw some of that, I'd have a different opinion. Like say, hey, there's a bad guy.
They actually found some bones.
It's not George Bush laying down in a coffin and skull and bones.
Yeah, but with Ben Franklin, they found a bunch of bones buried underneath his house.
Sure, they did. Yeah. Now, again, I haven't. My antenna is up about that with him, right? But I'll say this too: God will use whomever He will. He says it in the Bible in many places. But He called Nebuchadnezzar His servant, and Nebuchadnezzar had the Israelites in bondage, right? And He called Nebuchadnezzar His servant. So I don't think Nebuchadnezzar was necessarily a real nice guy. There's some stories about him. but he was doing God's bidding in a roundabout way in certain things, and so be it. I can't say I would do those things in Freemasonry and those circles. It's not my bag. I know that. So, but I think in many instances, if you don't, for example, today, if you're not a bonesman in, say, the last 100 years, you're not going very far. That's one of my issues. Again, I've tried to have success in my life and build things and do things, and I have. But I can tell you this, one thing I've learned, if you're not on that side of the fence, if you're not in that club, and I'm just going to speak generally, you're not going very far. You're just not. You'll have a good life and be a good blue-collar or whatever, maybe a white-collar worker, but if you're not really fully on that side with them, if you're not a bonesman, let's just say, you're not going very far. You're going to be, there's limits. I'll leave it at that.
Now, you mentioned earlier about Eisenhower talking about the military-industrial complex. Are you familiar with that speech that Kennedy gave talking about secret societies?
I put her excerpts. I have my book I've recorded my book on audio. It's available in PDF, ebook, and audio. And I spent a good amount of time looking at Eisenhower, and I discovered early on that Eisenhower didn't write the speech. Number one, he was not familiar with it, and he was reading off a teleprompter that by the time he gave the speech was almost 10 years old. It was not teleprompter is not a new thing in our lifetime. It's been around, and so there are flaws in his speech. And again, Eisenhower was a puppet, and I call him that in my book. That's what he was. Now, he might have been a heck of a nice father and general and leader and all of those things, but he was a puppet, and most of our leaders are today. There are people above Eisenhower and above the president, and many Americans have a hard time with that. I get that. But our leaders really don't run anything. And if they do, they end up like JFK.
Yeah.
If they try to, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I was asking because we were talking about the Freemasons and Skull and Bones and stuff like that. Are you familiar with JFK's speech about secret societies and how we're not allowed to... Yeah,
some people believe that's what got him killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was at the one university. I've listened to it, and again, I believe JFK, and like we all, Ed, we all have changes in our mind on certain things as we grow and as we, live, and we find things out and we discover. All humans are wrong about a lot of things, and of course JFK was a part of an elite family, so he saw things that none of us ever will, and I believe JFK, in my heart anyway, I believe JFK had a change of heart, change of mind. And was he a good guy? Well, he was a heck of a womanizer. So if you're, kind of a family person, and let's just say Christian morals, that's going to stand out as well. That's a black mark, because he was a heck of a womanizer. But many of them are anyway. So in those that lifestyle, you're the president. You're bombarded constantly from the minute you wake. I don't know what you need to do to get through your day, but I do know, I do believe he had a change of heart. I think he did battle with his own brother, Bobby, on some things, and I think Bobby was more of a Kennedy-esque than the direction that John Fitzgerald was going in. So, but getting back to Eisenhower, Eisenhower gave the military-industrial comment as a part of his speech. And Eisenhower was a part of the military-industrial complex. And the military-industrial complex, he spoke about it in that speech as if it was a kind of a new thing. Here I'm giving you a little secret. Keep an eye on this the rest of your lives. I'm going to retire, but you do this. He was a part of it. World War I on up through. And Eisenhower was the guy that elected. They made him, 5-star general, head of NATO, the President of the United States. He was the guy. And the person that basically controlled Eisenhower, especially at the very top, was a man named Bernard Baruch. Well, Bernard Baruch, most people have never heard that name. Even more important than probably anyone in the last 100 and so years, 10 years or so in our American history, is Bernard Baruch. He was in touch with everyone. That includes Winston Churchill. Winston was probably a peanut to Baruch, but all world leaders. Bernard Baruch was the controller, basically, and gave Dwight Eisenhower his life. And Eisenhower he mentioned him in his book. One of the few people Eisenhower mentions by name that he respected, that he looked up to, I'll say, in his autobiography. So these players, by the way, there's a Baruch University in New York. I haven't followed it very much. I actually have a connection to it because before I even knew who Bernard Baruch was, when I lived in New York, I dated a girl, and I took her many mornings to school to Baruch University.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Yeah, because the name was very familiar to me. That's probably where I heard of it, Baruch College in New York City.
It's in Manhattan, and so hey, it's probably a heck of a good school. I don't know, but nevertheless, this later on, I'm researching. And I come across this guy. I keep coming across this guy named Bernard Baruch. Who is this guy? I've heard of Winston Churchill. I've heard of all. We've all heard these names, but no one's heard of Bernard Baruch. What? This guy was at the top. He was with the Warburgs. I mean, he was at the top, and I believe Baruch was probably a notch or two down as far as the people that, quote unquote, my words, run the world. Nevertheless, he was right there near the top. He was a Henry Kissinger on steroids, I'll say. So anyway. But getting back to leading up to the banks and the War of 1812, by the way, we're never taught much about the War of 1812, but the War of 1812 was because of the central bank issue at that time, and I go into some detail in the book about that. But that war was because there was an issue with the central banks and their charters not being renewed. And, well, of course, the bankers didn't like that, and so there's going to be a war, and we're told it's basically a war for this or that or the other. No, it was a war because the bankers weren't going to get their way. They weren't going to get their new charter, and they instigated some things, and they said it was because some ships had some disagreements out on the sea and with Britain, and we had to fight, and they burned Washington, D.C. to the ground, but we won. We survived. Yeah. No, that was a war because the bankers who had already moved in after the Revolutionary War, they weren't getting what they were after, and so we had another war. Well, then we had a depression, and that led up to, they wanted more. They wanted more control. There was people pushing back in the mid-1800s, and so they pressured, and that led us up to the Civil War. Okay, and all because of bankers, all because of their control. And this is documented, and history proves this out. The Civil War was not about slavery, Ed, even though if it helped to free the slaves, I'm all for it, okay? But it wasn't about slavery. It just turned into, that's a pretty good reason to get people stirred up. Because at that time, Ed, there were many Americans in our country that didn't own slaves, and they were against slavery. The slavery was foisted on America. We didn't, as Americans, become free, and now we want to own somebody. That didn't just happen, okay? No, many Americans were appalled at people who owned other human beings. And but the controllers of this world, they know what trips our trigger. And so and there's historical details that prove this. They set out to foster the idea that how bad it is that they're slaves, and and we'll pit them against each other, and we'll use this as an issue. Well, the Emancipation Proclamation wasn't even written until a year and a half after the Civil War began. Mm. So it wasn't about slavery, even though that's what we're told and taught. But it became one of the reasons why, well, let's do this. Let's create this divide. But the bankers were the ones that were the most upset because people were becoming informed, and they were tired of being oppressed and tired of paying heavy taxation, and that's always been an issue. And it led up to the Civil War, and what we gained from the Civil War was our federal government. Mm. This is never talked about. This is what we gained from this. There was martial law after the Civil War, and the Reconstruction period after the Civil War in America. And so there were pressures that were, by the way, those same pressures have been going on ever since. Our leaders are in an unenviable position of having all kinds of pressure from these money men, these money masters. They have to conform, and if they do, they will live a luxurious, wonderful life. Their kids will go to the best schools. That's the way it works. And if they don't, well, they're going to get dirt on you, they're going to compromise you, and they're going to do that anyway. Mm-hmm. And you're going to conform one way or another, or else you're going to get dead.
That might be a good point to stop and take a commercial break. Okay, that's a good warning right there. Okay. Let's take a little commercial break. We're with Ren Clegg. The book is written under the name W.A. Clement, and the book is called Satan's Show. Now, when we come back, I'm going to ask you, Ren, do you believe that the people behind these banks, the people who run this show, do you believe that they're actual Satanists? Well, I'm going to ask you that when we come back, okay? We'll be right back after these messages with more of Mr. Ren A. Clegg. Great stuff. And now a word from our sponsors. AlmightyGold.com. Get your gold in affordable quantities. 1 gram, 2.5 grams, 5 grams, no minimum purchase required. Why save in paper when you can save in gold? AlmightyGold.com understands it's difficult to afford gold in large quantities. No one can afford an ounce of gold. This is why Almighty Gold has introduced to you Carat Bars, a most reliable company where you can buy gold in minor quantities from as little as 1/10 of a gram. That's like $6. Each gold bar is inset into the Carat Bar frame, which is a standard credit card size, and it's covered by a safety laminate. It's imprinted with a unique DNA for counterfeit protection and provided with a blacklight authenticity signature on the front. Gold, AlmightyGold.com. They have a cryptocurrency backed in gold, and you can become an affiliate at AlmightyGold.com and make a commission from any gold that is purchased from your affiliate link. It's contact us at almightygold.com. That's their email address. Contact us at almightygold.com. Gold! Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe add new point-of-sale locations across the country quickly, or bring in revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services to your office building, warehouse, or lobby? CartKing.com is the answer to your needs. CartKing.com is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile retail, coffee, food carts, and kiosks that money can buy. For 20 years, CartKing.com has been working with clients across America to provide indoor and outdoor carts and kiosks for any application. That's www.cart-king.com. Give them a call at 877-986-7771. Tell them Ed Opperman sent you. So you go to the website, CartKing.com, you check out their different designs and models. You pick out which design applies to your business. They'll custom design it for you, custom build it for you, and ship it worldwide. CartKing.com. PureSoapFlakes.com. 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at puresoapflakes.com, greenhome.com, amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're talking about the book Satan's Show, written by W.A. Clement. Our guest is, that's a pen name, our guest is Ren A. Clegg. Mr. Clegg, the book is called Satan's Show. Are these people you're describing, are they actual Satanists?
In a sense, you could say some are. The ceremony and those things, I believe that where people get into some weirdness, I'll call it. I don't know if there's any special oath that whoever in our world is dealing directly with Satan. Satan is a spirit. He will be here in person, if you will, at some point in time, according to the Scriptures, if you believe that. But he is a wicked entity in control of much of our world, and yes, Almighty God gives him or allows him that control. I've said it many times in my life. Satan's in control of this world, and of course Christians will argue with me and say, no, God, Jesus is in control. What do you got? And I'll be prepared for that. God is, if you're a Christian and you read what the Bible actually says and what the manuscripts of God's Word actually state, historical record, yes, God created the heavens and the earth, but he also created us. And I'm saying this for those who believe. Those who don't believe, hey, I get it. I understand. With what's commonly taught, I understand why people don't believe, nonsense like Eve ate an apple and so forth. But Satan was also created by God. That was all done prior to our existence here on earth, and that's a whole other level and a whole other discussion. But it's terrific information that changes, an understanding, a common understanding. And Satan's allowed to control this world, and he does so through people. That's just the way it works. And if he, in certain circles, needs someone to do a certain jig and do weirdness, okay. I think Satan myself, is, as what did Aleister Crowley say, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. There's no rules. There's nothing holding people back, so to speak, especially people that are, I'll call them loose. There are a lot of people in this world, Ed, that are just, in their mind, they're loose, okay? There's no restrictions, so to speak. And I've just observed these people, and they're all around us in many aspects. There's nothing holding them back. There's no restraint. And I think Satan, in my own mind, I think he just kind of looks back and laughs and says, "There's another one of mine. I got that one." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But at the power levels, Satan is a power-hungry entity. And he thinks he is God. And anyone he can get to do his work, whether he has to coerce them, put a spell on them or whatever, buy them off with money, there are many different ways. He'll do it. That's just the way it is. And God allows it. Well, why does God allow it? That's a good question, some would say. Well, we're here. This is a test we're going through. Let's just look at it that way. And that test is, what side are you going to choose? And I'm here to say, regardless of what anyone believes, we have choices in our life. Hey, you choose to do, if it's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, or 65 nowadays, common, and you do 75, that's your choice. You could get a ticket, okay? You could get a speeding ticket. That's a choice. We all have choices in this world that we make all the time. And Satan will dangle whatever fruit in front of you he can, if he's looking to get you on his side. And our politicians are no different. And Satan could step back and say, "I didn't do it. They did it. He or she did it." Well, that's only going to go so far for him. But there's going to be a time where there's going to be a recompense. And so, nevertheless, Satan is a spirit. He will be here as an individual, a world ruler, if you will. Some call the Antichrist. when that is in the future, I believe it's going to be, could easily be anywhere inside of 70 years, but no man knows the hour. I don't want to get into preaching, so to speak, here, but no man knows the time. So when we hear people say Nostradamus predicted a date, or so-and-so over there predicted the date, and here's the end, and blah, 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 you know you're dealing with an idiot, because the Bible says, God says, I didn't even tell Jesus, my son. The closing verses of Mark chapter 13. So if Jesus Christ doesn't know, who in the heck is Nostradamus to think he knows? And so, bottom line, but we're here making choices, all of us, and that's going to come up to a climax, and we're heading towards that. And I titled the book Satan's Show because this is a show like no other. Our life, our world. This world is, yes, thousands of years old, man's existence. Is the earth millions of years old? Yes. Is man's existence here millions of years? No. But we're in this world, and we're here, and only in basically the last 100 to 150 years do we have the technology that we have. Our ancestors lived here a very substantially long time, and the technology they had was basically fire and wheel, okay? And they could make a cart, and they could make some swords and different things, but that was about it. And now all of a sudden, boom, and all this large span of time, now we have what we have. Well, we have it at this particular period of time, in my belief, because we're nearing the end. And that end doesn't mean abracadabra, boom, the next minute. No, there are certain benchmark things that have to occur. That's what the Bible is, I believe, for, to give us this information. And, of course, as a young boy, I went to church head, and I was told, don't read the book of Revelation. You're going to be gone. You're going to fly away. You know, you're going to rapture out of here. And don't. Well, then I started to read the book of Revelation. I could have said that probably early on in our discussion. That was a very important factor. When I started to finally read the book of Revelation that I was told not to read, this is probably one of the most important books in the entire Bible if you're looking for information. And so why are they saying don't read it? These are the head honchos, the instructors, the big gurus up front, you know, claiming to be God's representative. Well, and I found out otherwise in many aspects. So Satan is in control of this world. Well, he wants power. He is a egomaniac. That's who he is. That's one of the things he is. And he wants power, because power gives you everything else. People say, I want money. No, you want power if you really think about it, because you got power, you'll have the money. That'll follow. Don't worry. And Satan wants power, and he controls men and gets them to do whatever his bidding is, whatever he wants done. Whatever he wants done. And that's who Satan is. But even deeper than that, Satan is a child of God also. That's in the Bible. And this is his operation. Now, God manages things and keeps things in line. I believe, given us in the world, for that matter, the United States of America was God's hand. I believe not allowing Hillary Clinton to be president, I believe, was the hand of God. That doesn't mean Donald Trump is an angel. No, I'm not saying that. But God is in control, and he moves people and does things to keep things on a certain order, but he allows Satan free reign. And there's a lot of factors in that, but Satan is in control of this world. And I dare anyone to prove otherwise, whether you believe in the devil or not. Everywhere I look, evil is all over the place. Things that are perverse and things that we don't need. So, but there's a reason for that, because we're heading to a climax. And when this show goes to its final conclusion, most of the world will be in stunned disbelief. But in the meantime, all this technology, this is marvelous. This is in most people's minds, and by the way, mine too. This is something, man. Hey, when I was a boy, you didn't carry a phone around on your hip. You had to go search for the phone, and you didn't walk away from the phone with your phone. You know, the technology has progressed. You know, when I was a boy, and you too, Ed, no one knew how the one world system would be here. We heard rumblings. There will be a one world system. We didn't call it a New World Order. No one did. But I remember as a boy, adults talking and hearing some conversation, them saying, how are they going to have a global government? How can they do that? And, of course, back then, how could they defeat America? No one knew how. It wasn't even unimaginable, right?
Yeah, when you and me were kids, they didn't even have color TV. And then there was only three channels,
No, if you had color TV, you were in the 70s, and you were rare, and that was a very expensive item. It was black and white, yes, but our technology, no one knew or could see how a one-world system could come about, but the conversation was out there. Not very common, but it was out there. And yet here we sit today, or stand, and it's here. And anyone that disagrees with that is just a fool, but most people commonly know now that's what globalism is, the one world order. And it's continuing, and it will continue. But I remember in the 60s and 70s hearing conversations, Ed, and that was far out there. That's no way. That's just someone's dream, and that'll never happen. Well, it has happened, and we're living these things moment by moment. And just like we're living the things we're talking about, the end will also come about. The end of this world age, I will add, because we're not really all here just by accident, as I believe, and the Bible says so also, and when we die, it's not over. Just like before we came to this earth through the wombs of our mothers, we came from somewhere. We didn't just all of a sudden occur. Now, that's what Satan and that's what others want us to believe, but even Satanists know, Ed. Getting back to your question, are these people Satanists? Well, I don't even know that, Ed, that our leaders or people who are purveyors of power, I don't think they even care. They might be doing Satan's bidding or his work, but I don't think they go to some altar and worship Satan per se. They don't have to. All they have to do is get an idea or get an order from someone like Bernard Baruch and go do that task, and off they go. They don't have to worship Satan. Now, I can tell you this much: if you turn against Satan and refuse to do his bidding, you're not going to be in that position very long. You're going to, JFK found that, I do believe. So I don't get too involved in who actually worships at the altar of Satan and who doesn't, but we do have historical events. I call it historical, but we know about Skull and Bones and other secret societies and the things that they do. And yes, those things are very real. There's no question that you can summon the spirit of Satan. There's no question about that. And Elvis Presley is a good example, and I loved Elvis Presley, and I still do. But most people don't know that Elvis Presley, whether you call it study or whether you call it worshipped, Madame Blavatsky, okay, and many of satanic things. He was very much interested in that field. And even his outfits go back to outfits of some of the ancient, I don't know what the exact history is, but how warlocks used to dress and so forth, with a big collar, etc. And hey, pretty neat-looking outfit, and of course his talent really brought those things to the fore, but as far as the look, the appearance, and a tremendous talent, obviously, but to worship Satan, I don't think you have to go to some altar. To do and believe and follow the things of Satan is to be very loose, to be very loose in the mind, and anything goes. It's a free-for-all. Well,
Clegg, we're almost totally out of time. I'm going to have you come back because I know there's a lot I want to talk to you about. You said you did about 3 chapters on Jim Jones.
Yeah.
But we're totally out of time, though. What do you want to leave us with before we go?
Well, I don't really push the book hard or anything like that. I wrote it to really get to people that really we don't have a lot of time to talk. And I say, listen, I have this book. Go read it, and there's, you can do some research on it alone, and it'll carry you a long way. You'll have a lot to think about. So Satan's show is the organized show that we're all under. Okay, I know some Christians are they're probably calling me names right now. But yes, God is real, but God also allows Satan to control in this world. Look around, and there are things part of that are pulling us in not such a good direction. But we, as America, are reaping our rewards. I'm not speaking of anybody else in the world. That's their problem. But I'm an American. I love America very much. And America is reaping our rewards. Hey, if anybody doesn't believe that, take a look around. Now, God is there, and he is going to help us when we need him. But there are others he's not going to help. And so I would say to everyone, there are things that we are working up to in this show. And if people could get a little bit of seed of truth and take a look to help, prepare themselves. The television and the technology we talked about didn't just appear for no reason. It's here to conduct a show, and it's conducting a show. People turn it on, they're glued to it, and boy, that's the gospel. There's the show. But there are other things going on as well behind the scenes that we'll hopefully one day talk about again, Ed, with, for example, Jonestown. 900 some odd people didn't drink the Kool-Aid. They were murdered. That's not published. Why is it not published? Why is it not common knowledge? Because the proof is out there.
Okay, we're going to have to stop right there, but definitely I want to have you come back, and we're going to get into Jonestown and the rest of the topics covered in the book. Mr. Clegg, thank you so much. The book is called Satan's Show. You can find it under W.A. Clement on Amazon, but it's written by Ren A. Clegg. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, then you had Ren A. Clegg. The book is called Satan's Show, W.A. Clement. If you like today's show and today's topic, I'm going to have him come back and we're going to do another segment in the members section because I know he has a lot more to say. We kind of rushed through this. You can check our members section at OppermanReport.com. That's where we have additional shows, exclusive content you could find. Over 200 shows in there. Documents, court documents, the Trump, what was that thing? The Trump University lawsuit document. I got all of those in there. All the Jeffrey Epstein lawsuit documents I have in there. Tons and tons of content. You can find videos, all kinds of fun stuff at OppermanReport.com. And that's how you can find our show. We just started on KCAA, AM and FM in California. So if you're looking for advertising opportunities, reach out to me at OppermanReport@gmail.com. And we appreciate that. And also, too, if you want to help support my daughter, Victoria Opperman, help Victoria Opperman get to college at GoFundMe.com. Thank you so much.